Chapter 21. Whispers in the Attic. The attic smelled like cedar wood and something far older, a heavy scent of forgotten dreams and distant thunder, as if the very air had been trapped for decades, waiting for someone to breathe life into it again. After the fire, Ethan was insistent that we search every corner of the old cottage, convinced Gran might have hidden more secrets in the dusty corners and shadowed nooks. He helped me up the narrow, creaking staircase, careful not to jostle my twisted ankle too much. The steps moaned beneath our weight, protesting the intrusion after so many years of silence. At the top, he gently eased me down onto a stack of faded quilts piled beside the window, their patchwork colors muted by dust and time. I sank into their softness, grateful for the brief rest, while Ethan began pulling down boxes from the dark wooden beams overhead. "You don't have to do everything alone," I said quietly, watching him brush away decades of dust from the surface of a battered tin box. My voice softened with concern. "Neither do you." His hands froze mid-motion, lingering on the edge of a crate. For a long moment, the attic was filled only with the sound of the wind whispering through the cracked window panes and the faint creak of settling timbers. Then Ethan nodded slowly, as if accepting something unspoken between us. We sifted through the forgotten relics, faded photographs, brittle letters curled at the edges, dried herbs that still held a faint scent of lavender and sage. Then, tucked away beneath a loose floorboard, Ethan uncovered a wooden trunk unlike anything else in the attic. It was etched with strange, unfamiliar symbols, patterns that seemed almost burned into the wood itself, dark and jagged, twisting like ancient runes. The trunk was locked tight, its rusted clasp stubborn and unyielding. But I remembered the small, tarnished keys from Gran's desk and pulled one from the bunch. With a soft click, the lock gave way, releasing a long-held breath into the quiet space. Inside, wrapped carefully in red silk that shimmered faintly in the dim light, lay a leather-bound journal. I traced my fingers over its worn cover, sensing the weight of the stories it held. This was not Gran's journal. It was older. I opened the first page, and my breath caught at the names scrawled in urgent, hurried handwriting. Marietta Winslow, 1892. My great-great-grandmother. The ink on the pages bled softly at the edges, like water smeared across fragile parchment. Her words poured out in a frantic script, speaking of visions that haunted her sleep, visions of a man she loved, though he was not hers to love. She wrote of a great tree that spoke in dreams, its voice a low whisper only she could hear, calling her deeper into the woods. And she wrote of a ritual, a binding ceremony left unfinished, a promise broken, and a fate entwined with the forest's restless spirit. She was talking about him, I breathed, my voice barely a whisper, as if the attic itself might hear and shatter the fragile truth. She loved someone she wasn't meant to. Ethan's face darkened, his eyes reflecting the flickering shadows cast by the single candle I'd lit. "And the forest punished them for it," he murmured, voice low and heavy with realization. "And maybe it's still punishing us." A silence fell between us, thick and suffocating. The attic, once a sanctuary of forgotten things, now felt like the heart of something far older, far darker, a legacy that had threaded its way through generations, binding us all in its tangled roots. I closed the journal slowly, the pages whispering shut like a secret we were only beginning to understand. Chapter 22. Letters Never Sent. Back downstairs, the cottage felt heavier, as if the weight of the past had settled alongside us. We cleared the worn wooden table and carefully spread the fragile journal pages across its surface, the yellowed edges curling slightly beneath our fingertips. My hands trembled with a mix of fear and determination as I began to read aloud, my voice steady despite the storm of emotion rising inside me. "They say the tree chooses," I whispered, each word hanging in the quiet room like a solemn vow. "That those bound by its roots are cursed to repeat what they abandon. I fear we've doomed more than ourselves. I fear the leaves will never turn back." Ethan sat beside me, jaw clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. His eyes stared past the window, where the trees swayed gently, but his mind was clearly elsewhere, wrestling with a truth far beyond our understanding. After a long pause, he spoke, voice low and deliberate. "What if we weren't just brought together by chance, Ray? What if we were drawn to each other again because we never got to finish what they started? I met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words settle deep within me, igniting a fierce resolve. Then we finish it now, together. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, its amber glow casting dancing shadows against the walls as night thickened outside. We sat on the floor, the air around us charged with quiet urgency, when Ethan reached into a small wooden box and pulled out a bundle of letters tied neatly with a faded red ribbon. The ribbon was frayed at the edges, as if it had been handled and untied countless times over many years. Slowly, we untied it and unfolded the letters, their ink faded but still legible, each one addressed to the same name, Elias. The man Marietta had loved with a passion that seemed to bleed through time. The letters traced a story of love and longing, hope and heartbreak, secrets spoken only on paper. One after another, we read in silence, the room growing colder despite the fire. Then we reached the last letter, unfinished, unsigned, its final lines hurried and desperate. And at the very bottom, scrawled in rushed, uneven ink, were 3 words that made my breath catch and my heart seize. Forgive me, Ray. My name. My exact name. A chill ran down my spine as the realization slammed into me with unshakable certainty. I had lived this before, not just in fragments or dreams, but as a truth threaded through my very bloodline, a life repeating, a story looping endlessly beneath the shadow of the ancient tree. The room felt suddenly too small, the walls closing in with the weight of all the unfinished promises, the broken vows, the lives tangled together across time. Ethan's hand found mine in the dark, his grip steady and sure. We're part of this, Ray, he said softly, more than we ever realized, but this time we choose how it ends. And in that moment, amidst the ghosts of letters never sent and love never fully claimed, I believed him. Chapter 23. A Visit from the Past. The knock came just after midnight, 3 soft raps echoing through the stillness of the night, sharp and deliberate against the old wooden door. It was the kind of sound that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, slicing through the quiet like a cold blade. Ethan instinctively grabbed the fire poker from beside the hearth, his grip tight and steady. I moved toward the window, heart pounding in my chest, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the porch. But the night was empty, no shadow, no figure, only the restless sway of the trees under the moonlight. Then, cutting through the silence, a voice, raspy and broken, carrying the weight of time, called out from somewhere just beyond the porch light's flicker. Ray Winslow, Ethan Cole, the forest is calling, you have until the red moon. The words hung heavy in the night air, chilling and urgent, a summons we couldn't ignore. We rushed outside, breath catching in the cold air, the fire poker still clenched tightly in Ethan's hand. But the porch was deserted. No footsteps, no sign of anyone, just the cold night and the whisper of wind threading through the trees. Pinned to the weathered fence was a piece of parchment, held in place by a single thorn, sharp and cruel, like a warning meant to prick and provoke. I pulled it free carefully, unfolding it with trembling fingers. It was a map of the forest, hand-drawn in shaky ink. Paths twisted like veins across the page, and in one corner, a symbol circled in red, an ancient rune I didn't recognize at first glance but felt deep in my bones. A place we hadn't yet dared to go. I've seen that symbol before, Ethan said quietly, voice thick with unease. In my dreams, it's a stone altar hidden deep within the forest, covered in vines cold to the touch, like it's holding its breath, waiting. I stared at the map, the red circle pulsing in my mind like a heartbeat. And if we don't go? I asked, voice barely more than a whisper. He didn't answer, but his silence spoke louder than words. Because we both knew the truth. The forest wouldn't wait. If we refused to answer its call, it would come to us. And whatever it wanted, it wouldn't stop until it had its due. Chapter 24. Into the Hala. We packed at dawn, the first pale light stretching across the horizon like a hesitant promise. The cottage felt quieter without the weight of the night's secrets pressing down on us, but the unease lingered like a shadow clinging to our backs. The map in my hand was our only guide, leading us deeper into the forest than we'd ever dared to venture, past the jagged ridge that scraped the sky, beyond the silver creek whose waters whispered ancient songs, to a place so remote even the birds had fallen silent. The trees here grew unnaturally close, their trunks massive and gnarled, branches twisting and intertwining overhead until they formed a thick canopy that swallowed the sunlight whole. Darkness settled like a living thing beneath the leaves, cool and heavy, pressing in on all sides. Ethan led the way, machete flashing as it cut through the dense underbrush, carving a path where none existed. Each step forward felt like stepping deeper into a dream or a nightmare. My senses screamed in alert. Every rustle, every distant crack of wood, every sigh of the wind felt amplified, charged with meaning. Finally, the trail twisted open into a clearing. At its center stood the altar. Massive and ancient, the stone structure was carved with symbols older than memory, their edges worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Vines clung to the altar's base like fingers, weaving in and out of the carvings, but the power it held was undeniable, electric, almost palpable in the still air. Behind the altar was the hollow, a cavernous opening shaped like a heart, its depths pulsing with a faint crimson light that seemed to breathe in rhythm with the forest itself. The glow was eerie, otherworldly, as if the earth's own pulse had found refuge there. As we stepped closer, the air thickened, charged with something unseen but deeply felt. Whispers rose from the hollow, not words, but emotions, longing, grief, fury washing over me like a tidal wave. It was as if the very essence of the forest was speaking directly to my soul. Ethan approached the stone altar, his footsteps steady despite the tension tightening around us like a noose. He raised his hand and placed his palm flat against the cold, ancient surface. The hollow's crimson light flared suddenly, bright and fierce. And then Ethan screamed. A raw, guttural sound that shattered the silence and echoed through the trees, ripping through the veil of centuries-old secrets. Chapter 25, Bound by Blood. I ran to him as fast as my legs would carry me, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Ethan collapsed to his knees at the base of the altar, his body trembling uncontrollably, eyes wide and unblinking like he was trapped somewhere beyond this world. Panic seized me, and I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him gently but desperately. "Ethan! Ethan, come back to me!" I cried, my voice cracking with fear. His body convulsed once, then twice like a storm breaking free inside him. For a moment, everything seemed to hang suspended in time, the forest holding its breath around us. Then, slowly, Ethan stilled, his chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. I was trembling, my hands slick with cold sweat as I pressed closer. The darkness of the hollow seemed to press in on us, the faint crimson light flickering like a heartbeat. I saw tears spill down Ethan's pale face, tracing silent rivers of pain and fear. "I saw them," he whispered, voice hoarse but steady. "Ray, I saw it all, Marietta, Elias, the ritual, the blood. They tried to bind their love to the tree, to protect it, to protect each other. But something went wrong. She died, Ray. He couldn't save her." The weight of his words crushed me, grief and terror twisting in my chest like a knife. My throat burned with unshed tears. "And now we're the echoes," I breathed, the truth settling like ash. Ethan nodded slowly, each movement heavy with sorrow and determination. "We can't run anymore. This isn't just about us. It's about everything they left unfinished. We have to finish what they started, or the forest will take you just like it took her." His hand disappeared beneath his coat, and when he pulled it out again, he held the carving knife he always carried. A small blade, worn but sharp, its handle carved from dark wood. The dim light caught the steel, making it gleam like a shard of moonlight. He looked at me, his eyes burning not with fear but with fierce, unyielding fire, the kind of fire that blazes in the face of the impossible. "If I have to bleed to break this, I will," he said, voice steady, unwavering. In that moment, all hesitation fled from me. I didn't stop him. Instead, I reached out, taking his hand in mine, ready to face whatever was coming, bound by blood, by love, by a fate older than we could comprehend. The forest around us seemed to lean in closer, its whispers turning into a low, urgent chant as the ancient ritual we were part of began to stir anew.